In the heart of ancient Judah, a young man named Daniel lived a life filled with promise, faith, and the quiet strength of youth. Born into a noble family, he was known not only for his intelligence but also for a deep devotion that guided every choice he made. Yet, in a world where empires rose and fell with the sweep of armies, even the most promising lives could be uprooted in an instant. It was during the reign of King Jehoiakim that the shadow of destiny stretched over Jerusalem. The mighty Nebuchadnezzar, ruler of Babylon, set his eyes on the holy city, and with an army unmatched in strength and strategy, he besieged its walls. Fear gripped the people, and uncertainty filled the streets, for no one could predict what would come next. Among the captives taken from their homes, Daniel's fate was entwined with a foreign empire, a land of dazzling splendor and unfamiliar customs. Imagine the journey. A long, arduous trek across the desert, the sun beating down on weary shoulders, the distant horizon promising neither comfort nor familiarity. Daniel's heart must have been heavy with longing for his homeland, for the familiar sights of Jerusalem, and for the sacred traditions he had known since childhood. Yet within him burned a spark of quiet but unshakable resolve. Even in exile, he carried with him a faith that would guide him through the trials ahead. Arriving in Babylon, Daniel encountered a world of wonders and challenges. The city gleamed with monumental architecture, bustling marketplaces, and the rhythm of a culture entirely foreign to him. But amidst this grandeur lay a challenge that would test not only his mind but his heart and spirit. Selected to serve in the royal court, Daniel faced an education and training designed to shape him in the image of the Babylonian elite, to mold his thoughts, tastes, and loyalties. For many, this might have been an opportunity, but for Daniel, it was a test, a choice between conformity and remaining true to his beliefs. This is where Daniel's story begins to captivate the imagination. Exile, standing at the crossroads of culture and faith, of survival and principle. His journey is not just one of physical distance, but of moral courage, of wisdom, and of a steadfast heart in the face of overwhelming pressure. The trials he would face in Babylon, challenges of integrity, temptation, and the unknown set the stage for extraordinary feats of insight and courage that would echo through history. As we follow Daniel from the gates of Jerusalem to the splendor of Babylon, we are reminded that even in the darkest moments, resilience and faith can illuminate the path ahead. His story encourages us to stand firm in our values, to seek wisdom in times of uncertainty, and to trust that perseverance can transform trials into triumphs. If you are ready to journey with Daniel, to witness courage in exile, faith in adversity, and wisdom that transcends time, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Join us as we explore the incredible story of Daniel, the young noble from Judah whose faith would challenge empires and inspire generations. Stay with us, because this is only the beginning of an extraordinary journey. The journey from Jerusalem to Babylon had already tested Daniel's spirit. Yet it was only the beginning of a life shaped by challenges that would demand both brilliance and unwavering faith. After the long, weary days of travel through harsh desert winds and the endless expanse of foreign lands, Daniel and the other young captives finally entered the great city of Babylon, a place unlike anything they had ever known. Before them stretched towering walls of unimaginable height, broad streets bustling with merchants from distant kingdoms, and palaces adorned with carvings of gods and legends alien to their heritage. The air was alive with the scent of exotic spices and the hum of voices speaking languages they could barely understand. Babylon, with all its grandeur, seemed to pulse with both mystery and power. And for those who had been torn from their homeland, the sight was as intimidating as it was breathtaking. Among the captives, certain young men stood out, noble sons of Judah chosen for their strength, wisdom, and learning. Daniel was among them. his noble upbringing and sharp intellect marking him as one destined for more than mere survival. Babylonian officials, acting on the orders of King Nebuchadnezzar, sought to shape these young exiles into instruments of the empire, selecting those with the keenest minds and the most promising talents for service in the royal court. This was not a simple act of benevolence but a calculated strategy. For Babylon prized knowledge and sought to absorb the brightest of those it conquered, turning former enemies into loyal servants of the crown. Daniel and his companions were soon brought into the heart of the palace, where their true transformation was to begin. Within the royal training halls, they were introduced to the language and literature of the Babylonians, a culture steeped in ancient wisdom. Mathematics, astronomy, and the epic tales of gods and kings. Clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform writing filled the archives, and their teachers, scholars of immense learning, wove stories of creation, of heroic struggles, and of the mysteries of the stars. For youths raised in the traditions of Judah, these lessons were both fascinating and unsettling. For every lesson carried not only knowledge, but also the subtle weight of a culture that worshipped different gods and celebrated ideals foreign to their faith. The education was rigorous, demanding long hours of study and an open mind to ideas far removed from the sacred scriptures of their homeland. The Babylonians sought not only to train their minds but also to reshape their identities, providing them with new names that reflected the deities and customs of their captors. It was a quiet yet deliberate act of assimilation, a way to erase the memory of Judah and replace it with loyalty to Babylon. Daniel felt the tension within himself. To excel meant to learn well the very culture that had conquered his people. Yet to remain true to his God meant never forgetting who he truly was. This inner struggle became the silent forge in which his character was strengthened, his wisdom tempered by the fire of adversity. Life within the palace glittered with opportunities and temptations. The court of Nebuchadnezzar was a world of luxury, where jeweled halls echoed with music and the tables of the mighty overflowed with rich foods and wines. To many, such abundance was a reward, a chance to embrace comfort after the hardships of exile. Yet Daniel and his friends knew that not all that glitters is worthy of trust. They had been raised with a deep reverence for the laws and traditions of their ancestors, and every choice within this new world tested their loyalty to those sacred values. The very meals served in the royal dining halls, seasoned with ingredients and prepared in ways that defied their dietary laws, became a daily reminder of the silent battle between conformity and conviction. Yet amid these challenges, Daniel's brilliance shone. He approached the teachings of Babylon not as one who surrendered his faith, but as one who sought wisdom without losing the essence of his belief. His mind absorbed the sciences and literature with remarkable clarity, yet his heart remained anchored in the God of his fathers. His companions Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah stood with him in this quiet resistance, each one a living testament to the possibility of learning from a foreign culture without being consumed by it. Together they formed a brotherhood of faith and courage, their shared trials forging a bond stronger than the walls of Babylon itself. The months turned into years as Daniel and his friends grew in knowledge and stature. The palace tutors, once skeptical of these exiled youths, began to recognize their extraordinary gifts. They mastered the intricacies of the Babylonian tongue, interpreted the riddles of ancient texts, and even gained insight into the movement of the heavens. Their wisdom soon outshone that of many native-born scholars, and whispers of their exceptional understanding reached the ears of the king. Yet even as they excelled, they carried within them a quiet strength drawn not from the wealth of Babylon, but from the enduring faith that had sustained their people through centuries of trial. For Daniel, this time of education and preparation was more than a chapter of survival. It was the foundation of a destiny that neither he nor his captors could yet imagine. The lessons of Babylon sharpened his intellect, but the lessons of his faith shaped his soul, preparing him for a future in which dreams, visions, and divine wisdom would set him apart in the courts of kings. In the heart of a foreign empire, Daniel began to embody a truth that transcended borders: that one can walk among the mighty of the earth without losing sight of a higher calling. His path was only beginning, but already the quiet courage of his heart was writing a story that would echo through the ages. A testament to the power of faith and the strength of a spirit unbroken by exile or the glittering temptations of a conquering world. Despite the splendor of Babylon and the honor of serving within Nebuchadnezzar's magnificent palace, Daniel quickly faced a challenge that would define his character more sharply than all the lessons of language and literature. The king's court, with its glittering banquets and endless displays of wealth, offered food and wine from the royal kitchens, meals so lavish that they dazzled even the most seasoned nobles, platters of roasted meats, delicate breads sweetened with honey, and goblets brimming with the finest wines of the empire were set before those being trained for service. To many of the young exiles, it was a dream to be welcomed to such a table after the harsh journey from Jerusalem. Yet for Daniel, each feast carried a weight that went far beyond mere indulgence. For hidden in these delicacies were practices and rituals that clashed with the sacred laws of his faith. From childhood, Daniel had been raised to honor the dietary commands of his people, guidelines that were not merely about food but about obedience and identity. The meals of the Babylonian court, though rich and enticing, were often prepared in ways that violated these laws, whether through the use of meats sacrificed to foreign gods or methods of preparation considered unclean. To partake would mean more than enjoying a meal. It would signal a quiet surrender, a subtle acceptance of the ways of Babylon at the cost of his covenant with the God of Israel. In that moment, beneath the shimmering lights of the palace, Daniel understood that the true test of faith was rarely in grand gestures but in the quiet, daily choices that revealed the heart. He resolved, therefore, not to defile himself with the king's food and wine. It was a decision that, on the surface, might have seemed small, but in the context of an empire that demanded conformity, it was an act of remarkable courage. Refusing such an offer could be seen as an insult to the king himself, a dangerous defiance in a court where loyalty was expected and rebellion swiftly punished. Yet Daniel approached the challenge not with arrogance or hostility but with wisdom and grace. He spoke respectfully to the chief official overseeing their training, explaining his desire to remain faithful to the dietary laws of his people. The official, though sympathetic, feared the wrath of the king. What if Daniel and his companions grew weak without the rich food and wine provided? What if their health suffered, and the king took it as a personal affront? But Daniel, steady in his trust that faithfulness would not lead to ruin, proposed a simple test. For 10 days, he and his companions would eat only vegetables and drink only water. At the end of that time, their appearance and health could be compared to those of the others who ate from the royal table. If they appeared weaker, the official would have grounds to insist on the king's provisions. But if they remained strong or stronger, then their request could stand. The official agreed, perhaps out of curiosity or quiet admiration for Daniel's confidence. And so, while the rest of the trainees dined on meats and drank from golden goblets, Daniel and his 3 companions Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah chose the simplest fare. Day after day, they consumed only the fruits of the earth and the water that sustained life. Their commitment a silent but powerful declaration of loyalty to their God. Each meal became more than sustenance. It was an act of worship, a reaffirmation of identity in a place where everything around them sought to reshape who they were. As the 10 days passed, the difference was undeniable. Far from growing thin or weak, Daniel and his friends appeared healthier and more vibrant than all the others who had feasted on the royal delicacies. Their eyes shone with clarity, their skin was bright, and their strength seemed untouched by deprivation. The chief official, astonished by the outcome, granted them permission to continue their chosen diet, and from that moment forward they were allowed to eat as their faith required. What began as a quiet decision became a visible testimony, showing that obedience and trust could bring blessing even in a foreign land. This moment was not merely about food. It was about the essence of faith. In the glittering halls of Babylon, where pressure to conform was relentless and compromise was easy, Daniel demonstrated that true strength lies in the resolve to remain faithful when no one would have faulted him for bending. His choice to honor the God of his fathers in something as ordinary as a meal became a profound act of defiance against assimilation, a declaration that his identity could not be purchased with luxury or dulled by comfort. The impact of this decision rippled far beyond those 10 days. The discipline and courage forged through this small but significant test prepared Daniel for the far greater challenges that lay ahead, the fiery furnace his friends would face, the visions of empires rising and falling, and the lion's den where his faith would again be tested. By choosing to be faithful in what seemed minor, Daniel built the spiritual strength to stand firm when the stakes would be far higher. His quiet refusal in the palace dining hall became the foundation of a life that would inspire kings, challenge empires, and echo across the centuries as a story of unwavering conviction. Daniel's example speaks across time, reminding every generation that faith is proven not only in moments of great drama, but in the everyday choices where integrity is tested. His steadfastness invites us to consider the power of small decisions and the courage it takes to remain true to our deepest beliefs when the world around us offers every reason to compromise. In Babylon, Daniel thrived not because he embraced its ways, but because he held fast to the identity that no empire could take from him. And in doing so, he became a living testament to the enduring strength of faith and the quiet triumph of a heart devoted to what is right. Time passed in Babylon, and Daniel's wisdom and steadfast faith continued to distinguish him among the young men of the royal court. His days were filled with learning, with study, and with careful adherence to the laws of his God. Yet the palace still demanded more than intellectual skill. It demanded insight, discernment, and the ability to navigate the complex currents of power that flowed through the empire. It was during this period of growth and preparation that Daniel would be called to face one of the most extraordinary challenges of his life, a moment that would not only define his destiny, but also reveal the sovereignty of the God he served. One night, King Nebuchadnezzar was disturbed by a dream that left him both shaken and restless. The images had seemed vivid, impossible to forget, yet upon waking, the details eluded him. The king's advisors, the magicians, enchanters, and wise men of Babylon were summoned to interpret this enigmatic vision, yet no one could uncover its meaning. The king, in frustration and desperation, demanded not merely an explanation, but the recounting of the dream itself, a request that no earthly wisdom could fulfill without divine revelation. The palace trembled under the tension of this demand, for failure to comply could cost the lives of the wisest in the empire. And Nebuchadnezzar's impatience only heightened the stakes. It was in this charged atmosphere that Daniel, having earned a reputation for exceptional discernment and steadfast character, sought an audience with the king. Calm, respectful, and confident, he requested time to seek understanding, a request granted through the patience and subtle encouragement of his companions and the chief official. Returning to his quarters, Daniel gathered Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and together they knelt in fervent prayer. They did not pray for personal gain, nor for the recognition that might follow. They prayed for wisdom, clarity, and the revelation of a mystery that no human mind could solve. Night passed as they sought divine guidance, their hearts united in devotion and their spirits lifted in hope. By morning, the vision had been revealed, Daniel approached the king, not with the arrogance of one claiming mastery over earthly knowledge, but with the humility of one guided by a higher authority. Standing before Nebuchadnezzar, he explained that the dream and its interpretation belonged to God alone, the one who establishes kingdoms and determines the course of history. Daniel described the vision, a colossal statue, its head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs and feet partly iron and partly clay, each element representing a succession of empires, each destined to rise and eventually be replaced. He spoke of a stone, cut without human hands, that struck the statue, shattering it, yet growing to fill the earth, a kingdom that would endure forever, established not by human ambition but by divine will. As Daniel spoke, the weight of his words was not lost on the king. Nebuchadnezzar's heart filled with awe, for he recognized that this explanation could not have been the product of mere mortal skill. The vision revealed the transient nature of worldly power and the ultimate authority of the God who governs the fate of nations. Daniel's interpretation bridged the gap between human ambition and the divine providence, showing that empires rise and fall according to a plan far greater than any king's command. The words resonated deeply, not only for the king but for all who heard them, illustrating the eternal principle that true sovereignty rests in the hands of the Creator. The effect on Nebuchadnezzar was immediate and profound. He fell to the ground in reverence, acknowledging that Daniel's God was indeed the ruler above all rulers, the revealer of mysteries that no human mind could fathom. From that moment, Daniel's position in the royal court was secured not merely by his intellect, but by the recognition that he served a higher power, one whose wisdom surpassed all earthly knowledge. His ability to interpret dreams became a symbol of divine authority and a testament to the enduring strength of faithfulness and integrity in a world driven by human ambition and intrigue. Yet the dream was more than a personal triumph for Daniel. It was a message to the empire itself. It reminded the powerful that even kings are subject to forces greater than their armies, their wealth, or their palaces. The vision illustrated the fleeting nature of human achievements and the permanence of divine purpose. Daniel, in faithfully conveying this revelation, demonstrated that wisdom and discernment are inseparable from moral integrity and devotion. The palace, which had seemed a place of threat and uncertainty, became the stage upon which Daniel's unwavering faith and insight were displayed, influencing the decisions of a king and shaping the course of history within the empire. This episode also solidified Daniel's role as a bridge between cultures and beliefs. A young man from a conquered nation standing with courage and respect in the court of a mighty king, bringing messages that transcended earthly power. His interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream was not merely an act of cleverness, but a reflection of a life rooted in principle and devotion. A life that trusted in the guidance of a higher hand even when surrounded by opulence and pressure to conform. Through this vision and its interpretation, Daniel exemplified the profound impact that faith, insight, and integrity can have in the most challenging circumstances, showing that knowledge paired with conscience can influence rulers and shape empires, and that even in exile, the devoted and wise can become instruments of divine purpose, carrying messages of hope, justice, and enduring truth to a world that often seems governed by chance and human ambition. In telling this part of Daniel's story, we are reminded that wisdom is never neutral. It carries responsibility, especially when wielded in the corridors of power. Daniel's example shows that true understanding comes not from mastery of language or culture alone, but from alignment with principles higher than oneself. As we follow Daniel's journey, his courage to speak truth in the presence of kings teaches us that integrity and faithfulness are forces that can withstand the mightiest of empires, that insight rooted in virtue transcends time and place, and that one life devoted to higher wisdom can illuminate the paths of countless others. The court of King Nebuchadnezzar, despite its grandeur and order, was a place where power often sought to assert itself through fear, and where obedience was demanded not only in word but in action. Following the interpretation of the king's dream, Nebuchadnezzar's heart was stirred by both awe and pride, and in a demonstration of his authority and the glory of his empire, he commanded the construction of a massive golden statue, towering in its splendor, to symbolize the strength and unity of Babylon. The command was clear and absolute. When the instruments of music played, all subjects were to bow and worship the image, affirming their allegiance to the king and the empire he represented. To refuse was unthinkable, for the penalty was death by fire, a warning to all who might consider defiance. Amid the thousands who stood before this monumental figure, 3 young men of Judah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, faced a test far greater than any lesson in language, literature, or courtly decorum. These men had been trained alongside Daniel, educated in the ways of Babylon, and immersed in its culture, yet their hearts remained devoted to the God of Israel. When the music sounded and the command echoed across the plaza, they did not bow. Their refusal was not an act of pride, nor a desire to challenge authority for its own sake. It was an unwavering commitment to faith, a recognition that the worship of a man-made image could never replace devotion to the Creator who had sustained them through exile, hardship, and uncertainty. When their defiance was reported to Nebuchadnezzar, the king's anger was immediate and intense. Flames of fury mirrored the fire that would soon consume the furnace, and he summoned the young men to explain their audacity. Standing before the monarch, their words were steady and fearless. They proclaimed that even if the king's decree demanded death, their loyalty to God would not waver. They spoke not in defiance of the king personally, but in affirmation of a higher law, declaring that the God they served had the power to save them. Yet even if he chose not to, they would remain faithful. Their courage was a silent rebuke to the notion that fear should dictate faith, a lesson that strength and conviction are forged in the face of peril rather than comfort. Fury gave way to action, and the king commanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual, its flames roaring like a tempest, consuming all in its path. The soldiers tasked with casting the men into the furnace hesitated, for the heat was unbearable and the fire seemed almost alive. Yet the order was absolute. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were bound and thrown into the blazing inferno, the doors sealed, and the air filled with smoke, crackling, and the oppressive weight of certain death. Those who witnessed the scene feared, not only for the lives of the young men, but for the judgment of the king should anything go wrong. Yet amid the chaos, a calm unfolded, unseen by human eyes, a presence that would transform the furnace from a place of destruction into a stage for the miraculous. To the astonishment of all, as the king peered into the furnace, he saw not 3, but 4 figures walking unharmed among the flames, the 4th appearing like a divine being, radiating light and presence beyond mortal comprehension. The fire, meant to consume and destroy, had no power over them. Their robes were untouched, their hair unscorched, and the heat left them unharmed. The court, the soldiers, and even Nebuchadnezzar himself stood in awe, witnessing a reality that defied logic, a miracle that transcended the laws of nature and the authority of kings. In that moment, the king recognized the supremacy of the God of Israel, understanding that true power does not reside in gold, bronze, or iron, but in the Creator whose hand can save against any threat, whose sovereignty surpasses the might of empires. The king commanded them to come out of the furnace, and as they emerged, the air filled with awe and reverence. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were unharmed, their steadfast faith rewarded with life and vindication, a living testament to the protection afforded by devotion and courage. Nebuchadnezzar, moved beyond words, praised the God who had delivered them and decreed that no one in his kingdom should speak against this God, acknowledging a power far greater than his own. What had been intended as an execution became a declaration of divine authority, a story that would echo through generations as a lesson in courage, faith, and the enduring strength of unwavering conviction. This event also marked a pivotal moment for Daniel, who watched as his friend's faith was tested and proven victorious, reinforcing the lessons he had learned in quiet resistance, in the disciplined adherence to God's law even in the face of subtle threats and overt pressures. It was a reminder that integrity and courage are often measured not in the safety of comfort, but in the trials that challenge every fiber of one's being, and that miracles, while inspiring, are inseparable from a foundation of obedience, wisdom, and trust. The furnace was more than fire. It was a crucible of faith, shaping not only those who endured it but all who bore witness to the power that guided their lives. For the young men of Judah, the blazing furnace was transformed from an instrument of punishment into a testament of divine justice, a narrative that would inspire exiles, believers, and dreamers for generations. It demonstrated that loyalty to one's principles and courage in the face of oppression can withstand even the most formidable trials, and that true strength is measured not by conformity, but by the steadfastness of the heart. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego emerged not only alive but exalted, symbols of what is possible when faith meets the impossible, and when the soul chooses unwavering truth over fear of consequence. In the flickering light of that miraculous night, the young men's story illuminated the enduring lesson that devotion, courage, and integrity are forces more powerful than any human authority, shaping history and leaving a legacy that continues to inspire those who seek to live faithfully amidst the trials of the world. Time in the Babylonian court flowed with grandeur, politics, and the quiet tension that accompanies the lives of those who serve great kings. Yet even amidst the splendor of golden halls and the ceaseless rhythm of palace life, the heart of Nebuchadnezzar was not at peace. His mind, still stirred by the dreams and visions that seemed to reach beyond the ordinary world, was troubled one night by a vision more vivid and unsettling than any before. In his sleep, he saw a mighty tree, immense and towering, its branches spreading across the sky, visible from the farthest corners of the earth. The tree's foliage was lush, its fruits abundant, providing nourishment to all living creatures, while birds nested among its branches, and the animals of the field found shelter in its shade. The vision painted a picture of unmatched prosperity and influence, yet as the king watched, a heavenly messenger descended from the skies, swift and commanding, and decreed that the tree be cut down, leaving only its stump and roots intact. Nebuchadnezzar awoke with a start, his heart heavy with uncertainty, sensing that the vision carried a warning far more profound than he could yet comprehend. In his waking hours, he called upon Daniel, the young Hebrew whose insight and integrity had already earned the king's trust and respect. Standing before Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar recounted the vision with every detail preserved in memory. Yet he sought understanding, for his heart was weighed with anxiety and curiosity. Daniel listened attentively, his mind moving with both reverence and clarity, knowing that the interpretation lay not in human wisdom but in the guidance of God, whose hand directed the fates of kings and empires alike. With measured words, Daniel revealed that the great tree represented the king himself, that his kingdom had grown vast and powerful, touching the farthest reaches of the earth, providing sustenance, shelter, and protection to countless subjects. Yet the decree to cut it down foretold a humbling period, a time in which Nebuchadnezzar would be removed from his throne and live like an animal, consuming grass as oxen do, exposed to the elements, until he recognized that sovereignty over the kingdoms of men belongs not to mortal kings, but to the Most High God. The words fell upon the king with weight and gravity, igniting a fire of fear and disbelief. for a ruler accustomed to power, influence, and deference. The thought of being stripped of status and reduced to the condition of beasts was terrifying. Yet Daniel spoke not in condemnation but in counsel, urging Nebuchadnezzar to accept righteousness, to turn from pride, and to acknowledge the sovereignty of the Most High, for only then could he hope to regain favor and security. Despite the warning, the prophecy unfolded with relentless certainty, and in due time, Nebuchadnezzar experienced the full measure of the vision's meaning. Pride and arrogance gave way to disorientation, and he found himself wandering the fields, eating grass, his mind clouded, his appearance transformed, a human mind enclosed in the existence of an animal, the splendor of palaces, the adoration of subjects, and the trappings of authority became distant memories, replaced by the raw struggle for survival and the humbling simplicity of existence dictated by forces far greater than any earthly throne. During these 7 years, the empire itself did not falter, for the mechanisms of governance continued under ministers and advisors. Yet the personal journey of the king was a vivid illustration of the principle that no human authority is absolute when measured against divine will. The people of Babylon, observing their ruler's transformation, must have been filled with awe, fear, and speculation, for the story of a king humbled so completely was a lesson writ large across the land. Nebuchadnezzar, even in the midst of this humbling, retained the awareness of a higher order. And gradually, as the years passed, recognition began to dawn within him that his power, his wealth, and his dominion were gifts from the hand of the Most High, to be wielded with wisdom, humility, and reverence. When the appointed time concluded, Nebuchadnezzar lifted his eyes to the heavens, and a transformation occurred both within and without. His mind, once clouded by pride and delusion, cleared, and he returned to his throne, restored not only in position but in understanding and insight. The experience had reshaped him, teaching lessons no palace intrigue or military conquest could ever impart. That true authority is granted by God, that pride precedes fall, and that the measure of a ruler is not the vastness of his kingdom, but the humility with which he governs it. In public, he praised the Most High, acknowledging that all dominion and power belong to God, that the deeds of men are fleeting, and that mercy, justice, and faithfulness are the foundations upon which true rule rests. For Daniel, witnessing the fulfillment of this vision reinforced the profound truths he had learned in his own journey, that God's sovereignty transcends earthly power, that integrity and devotion are tested in both ordinary and extraordinary circumstances, and that the outcomes of life, even for kings, are ultimately shaped by forces beyond human comprehension. The vision of the tree and the king's temporary downfall became more than a historical episode. It became a narrative of caution, instruction, and hope, demonstrating that humility and recognition of divine authority are essential to enduring success and spiritual insight. The story of Nebuchadnezzar, humbled and restored, would echo through generations as a testament to the principle that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of men, that even the mightiest can be brought low to learn wisdom, and that redemption and understanding are possible when the heart turns toward the guidance of God. In telling this part of Daniel's story, we see a powerful convergence of prophecy, human experience, and divine oversight, illustrating that the challenges faced by rulers and exiles alike are not merely political or social, but moral and spiritual, inviting reflection on the nature of power, responsibility, and devotion. The vision of the mighty tree serves as a timeless reminder that life's greatest lessons are often hidden in trials and transformations, that humility is a precursor to true greatness, and that recognition of God's supremacy is the cornerstone upon which all enduring achievement rests. Daniel's role in conveying this vision underscores his wisdom and faithfulness, showing that insight coupled with courage and integrity can illuminate paths for both kings and ordinary people alike, revealing the enduring interplay between divine sovereignty and human choice, and leaving a legacy that continues to inspire those who seek understanding, guidance, and the strength to live faithfully amidst the uncertainties of life. The night was thick with revelry in the grand palace of Babylon, its halls echoing with music, laughter, and the clinking of golden vessels that reflected the flickering light of countless lamps. Yet amidst the opulence, a shadow of unease crept silently across the festivity. King Belshazzar, grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, presided over a banquet that celebrated excess, indulgence, and the fleeting power of human kingship, unaware that destiny was about to make its presence known in a way that would shake the very foundations of his empire. As the king and his nobles drank from the sacred vessels plundered from the Temple of Jerusalem, a chilling sight interrupted their merriment. Fingers, unseen by any human hand, appeared and began to write upon the palace wall, the letters glowing with a spectral light that seemed to pierce both the eyes and the conscience of all who gazed upon them. Panic rippled through the assembly as the scribes and magicians, experts in every known law and interpretation, admitted their inability to decipher the mysterious message, their wisdom rendered impotent by forces beyond mortal comprehension. Belshazzar's fear grew with every passing moment, his pride and sense of security crumbling as the invisible writing glowed ominously upon the wall. In desperation, the queen, recalling the reputation of Daniel, the man who had once interpreted the dreams of his grandfather and revealed the wisdom of the Most High, suggested that he be summoned without delay. When Daniel arrived, a hush fell over the room, the weight of expectation and dread pressing upon him. Yet he carried with him a calm that spoke of years of trust in God and the courage that comes from unwavering faith. Standing before the king, Daniel observed the writing, the letters mysterious yet heavy with meaning, and he spoke not as one who relied on human skill, but as a messenger of divine insight, proclaiming that the interpretation lay not in earthly knowledge, but in the judgment of the God who governs the fate of nations. Daniel's words cut through the tension like a clarion call, explaining that the hand had written a message of warning, judgment, and imminent change, words that foretold the end of Babylon's reign and the transfer of its kingdom to the Medes and Persians. Each syllable he spoke carried the weight of inevitability. Mean, tekel, upharsin, he declared, unraveling their meaning to the trembling assembly, revealing that God had numbered the days of Belshazzar's kingdom, weighed it in the balances, and found it wanting, and that the empire, once mighty and seemingly invincible, would be divided and handed over to foreign powers. The declaration was a striking reminder of the transience of human achievement, a revelation that wealth, power, and lineage could not withstand the will of the divine, and that hubris, excess, and disregard for justice would invite downfall. As Daniel spoke, the weight of his interpretation sank into the consciousness of the king and all present. The reverie, once so confident and self-assured, dissolved into fear and apprehension. The sacred vessels, symbols of conquest and plunder, now served as instruments in the narrative of divine justice, highlighting the folly of arrogance and the impermanence of earthly power. Belshazzar, confronted with a truth he could neither ignore nor alter, experienced a moment of raw vulnerability, the stark recognition that no human decree, no fortification, and no army could shield him from the unfolding will of God. The palace, once a haven of indulgence, became a theatre of judgment, and the night that began in celebration ended with the quiet inevitability of history taking its course. That very night, the prophecy was fulfilled. The Medes and Persians, long poised at the edges of Babylon, moved decisively, and the city fell with swiftness and precision, as the empire that had once dominated the region was irrevocably handed into foreign hands. Belshazzar himself was slain, the grandeur of his reign extinguished in a single night, a stark embodiment of Daniel's warning. The fall of Babylon served not only as a historical turning point but as a profound lesson for all who would wield power, demonstrating that wisdom, courage, and integrity cannot be replaced by opulence, fear, or hubris, and that the judgment of the Most High transcends the calculations of men. For Daniel, the event underscored the pattern of divine sovereignty he had observed and conveyed throughout his life. Empires rise and fall according to God's design. Kings are humbled and exalted by forces beyond their understanding, and human strength is ultimately measured not by conquest but by adherence to righteousness, discernment, and fidelity to principles higher than one's own ambitions. His interpretation of the writing on the wall became emblematic of his role as an intermediary between the divine and human spheres, a vessel through which God's plans were revealed, and a testament to the enduring impact that courage, wisdom, and faithfulness can have in the midst of political upheaval, societal decadence, and the uncertainty of life in exile. This narrative, woven into the larger story of Daniel and his companions, demonstrates the recurring theme that spiritual integrity and insight are as vital as political acumen and physical survival. Daniel's courage to speak truth to a king, even in the face of danger, mirrors the unwavering faith that would later sustain him in the lion's den, revealing a consistent pattern in which divine guidance and human responsibility converge. The writing on the wall, a moment of cosmic accountability, serves as a vivid reminder that true power rests not in temporal authority but in moral discernment, in listening to wisdom, and in aligning one's actions with the enduring principles of justice and reverence for God. Through this episode, the story of Daniel continues to resonate across time, illustrating the ways in which faith, courage, and divine insight can shape history, influence the course of nations, and provide guidance to those who seek to navigate the complexities of life with integrity and foresight. Ultimately, the fall of Babylon and the interpretation of the writing on the wall are not merely historical events but enduring lessons, woven into the tapestry of human experience, showing that the trajectory of power is always subject to forces beyond immediate comprehension, and that those who trust in wisdom, divine or otherwise, can endure and illuminate paths for others even in the face of the collapse of kingdoms, the unpredictability of fate, and the relentless passage of time. Even after the dramatic fall of Babylon and the rise of Darius as the new ruler of the kingdom, Daniel's life remained a testament to unwavering faith and steadfast integrity, a beacon for all who sought to navigate the complexities of power, loyalty, and devotion. By this, Daniel had already distinguished himself among the administrators and satraps, not merely for his intellect and skill in governance, but for the incorruptible quality of his character, which inspired respect and admiration throughout the realm. Yet admiration often breeds envy, and Daniel's exceptional qualities stirred the jealousy of those who, despite their positions, sought influence through cunning rather than virtue. The officials, unable to find fault in his administrative decisions or personal conduct, recognized that the only vulnerability they could exploit lay in Daniel's unshakable devotion to God, for it was well known throughout the kingdom that his prayers were a regular public practice, a sacred ritual that neither proximity to kings nor fear of consequence could deter. With calculated cunning, these officials devised a scheme to trap Daniel, appealing to King Darius with flattery and manipulation, persuading him to issue a decree that forbade anyone in the kingdom from praying to any god or man except to the king for 30 days, under penalty of being thrown into the lion's den. The law, once issued and sealed with the king's signet, was irrevocable, a characteristic designed to protect the stability of governance, yet it now served as a mechanism of potential injustice, setting the stage for a confrontation that would test the limits of Daniel's courage and faith. News of the decree reached Daniel, yet he did not hesitate, did not alter his routine, nor attempt to conceal his devotion. 3 times a day, as he had always done, he knelt by his window, open toward Jerusalem, offering prayers of thanksgiving and supplication to the God he had faithfully served since his youth, a choice that placed him directly in the path of mortal danger, but reflected a heart aligned with divine guidance rather than human authority. When the conspirators observed Daniel's defiance, they reported immediately to the king, reminding him of the irrevocable decree and presenting Daniel as a man openly disobeying royal law. Darius, torn between his admiration for Daniel and the constraints of his own edict, experienced a profound inner turmoil, the weight of justice, mercy, and personal affection pressing heavily upon him. He confronted Daniel with a mixture of anguish and respect, yet the law left him powerless to alter the sentence. And with a heavy heart, he ordered Daniel to be cast into the lion's den, sealing the opening with his own signet ring to underscore the finality of the decree. The den, a deep pit inhabited by lions trained and fed for this very purpose, symbolized a near-certain death, an inescapable trap that tested human courage and divine providence alike. That night, King Darius could not find sleep. He fasted, rejecting entertainment and diversion, pacing in anxious vigilance, his mind consumed with concern for Daniel, the man whose wisdom and loyalty had been an anchor amidst the uncertainties of governance and the shifting tides of empire. Meanwhile, in the darkness of the den, Daniel faced the threat not with despair but with resolute trust, his spirit anchored in the knowledge that the God he served was sovereign over both mortal and beast, over kings and empires, and that divine protection could transcend the most formidable of dangers. The lions, fierce and wild, circled and roared, yet their natural instincts were held in check by forces beyond earthly perception, their jaws closed by an unseen power as Daniel's faith endured unbroken, a living testament to the potency of integrity and devotion. At the first light of dawn, King Darius rushed to the den, his voice trembling with a combination of hope, fear, and anticipation, calling out to Daniel, imploring the servant of a living God to reveal whether his faith had been rewarded. From the depths of the pit, Daniel's voice responded, calm and unwavering, declaring that God had sent his angel to shut the mouths of the lions, sparing him harm because he had been found innocent in the sight of the Most High, a clear and undeniable demonstration of divine intervention and protection. Overjoyed and astonished, the king commanded Daniel to be lifted from the den, and when he emerged, not a wound was found upon him, not a hair of his head was harmed, and his garments bore no trace of the ordeal, an awe-inspiring confirmation of the miraculous preservation granted through steadfast faith. The king's reaction was profound, both politically and spiritually, for he recognized in this event the sovereignty of the God whom Daniel served, and issued a decree throughout the kingdom, commanding all peoples, nations, and languages to revere the God of Daniel, the living God, whose dominion is everlasting, whose power is unchallenged, and whose protection extends to those who remain faithful even under threat of death. Daniel's experience in the lion's den became emblematic of the ultimate triumph of righteousness over intrigue, of courage over fear, and of divine wisdom over human schemes, reinforcing the principles that had guided his life since captivity in Babylon. Integrity, devotion, and unyielding faith can influence empires, alter decrees, and inspire generations. This episode also highlights the tension between human law and divine authority, illustrating that legal structures, no matter how meticulously designed, cannot fully contain the effects of moral and spiritual fidelity. Daniel's steadfastness served as a model not only for those who sought to maintain faith under persecution but also for rulers like Darius, whose understanding of justice and reverence was deepened through direct witness of the miraculous. The narrative of the lion's den, situated within the broader tapestry of Daniel's life from exile, education, and court service to interpretation of dreams, visions, and divine revelation, demonstrates the consistency of his character, the depth of his courage, and the extraordinary impact that unwavering faith can have, transcending personal survival to transform kingdoms and shape the moral consciousness of all who observe. Through the miraculous survival in the lion's den, Daniel's story continues to inspire, emphasizing that devotion and integrity are not passive virtues but active forces capable of influencing history, guiding leaders, and offering hope to the faithful. It is a vivid illustration of the principle that true power lies not in position or circumstance, but in the alignment of human action with divine purpose, and that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable danger, courage rooted in faith can lead to preservation, vindication, and enduring legacy. The life of Daniel, and particularly this pivotal moment in the den of lions, serves as a timeless testament to the enduring strength of trust, prayer, and the courage to remain faithful, reminding all who hear his story that steadfast devotion can triumph over threats, intrigue, and the most perilous challenges, leaving an indelible mark upon the course of history and the hearts of generations to come. Following his miraculous survival in the lion's den, Daniel's reputation soared not merely as a man favored by divine intervention, but as a figure whose wisdom, discernment, and unwavering moral integrity rendered him indispensable to the governance of an empire spanning vast territories and diverse peoples. Even as empires changed hands from the Babylonians to the Medes and Persians, Daniel's influence remained steadfast, a testament to a character forged in the crucible of exile, adversity, and continual faithfulness. Each new king who ascended the throne, whether impressed by his unmatched ability to interpret dreams, astutely manage state affairs, or navigate the intricate and often treacherous political landscape of the royal court, recognized in Daniel a unique combination of intellect and virtue, qualities that transcended the ordinary standards of human judgment and placed him in a position of unparalleled authority and trust. Daniel's rise to prominence was not accidental. It was a consequence of decades of consistent devotion, careful observation, and adherence to principles that governed not only his spiritual life, but his engagement with the world around him. He exercised discernment in counsel, demonstrating an acute understanding of human motivations, political dynamics, and the complex interplay between law, power, and morality. Even those who sought to undermine him repeatedly found themselves unable to uncover fault or error. For Daniel's conduct was impeccable, his decisions guided by wisdom that combined practical experience with a deep sense of justice. This combination of ethical steadfastness and administrative competence earned him recognition beyond the mere confines of royal favor, establishing him as an exemplar of leadership whose authority was grounded not in fear or caution but in respect, competence, and the acknowledgement of higher principles. Throughout his tenure under multiple rulers, Daniel remained vigilant, recognizing that positions of power are as vulnerable to envy and scheming as they are to external threats. Advisors and officials frequently attempted to manipulate circumstances, drafting laws or decrees designed to ensnare those whose loyalty and faith they could not corrupt. Yet Daniel navigated these treacherous waters with a balance of courage and prudence, never compromising his integrity while maintaining an unwavering commitment to both the well-being of the kingdom and the spiritual principles that guided his life, even in situations where human law and divine law seemed to conflict, such as the decree that led to his night in the lion's den. Daniel's actions demonstrated a remarkable equilibrium. He respected the authority of the rulers under whom he served, Yet he prioritized his moral and spiritual obligations, trusting in the justice and providence of God to sustain and vindicate him. Daniel's unique capacity to combine practical governance with spiritual insight made him a linchpin in the administration of the vast Persian Empire, a bridge between cultures, a mediator between the sovereign and the governed, and a guide whose counsel often shaped decisions of profound consequence. Kings relied on his interpretations of dreams and visions not as mere curiosities but as vital insights that informed policy, diplomacy, and military strategy. For Daniel's ability to perceive underlying truths and foresee potential outcomes had been proven time and again. His guidance was sought in matters both mundane and extraordinary, from the equitable distribution of resources to the deciphering of complex prophetic revelations, positioning him as a trusted advisor whose influence extended across the empire's political, social, and spiritual spheres. The story of Daniel's ascension also underscores a crucial theme: that enduring influence and authority are rarely the product of ambition alone but rather the outcome of consistency, ethical integrity, and the courage to act rightly even under pressure. Unlike many who rise through intrigue, manipulation, or fleeting charisma, Daniel's path was one of sustained virtue, demonstrating that personal character and faithfulness can elevate individuals to positions of significant impact while inspiring trust and admiration that transcend generations. This pattern of recognition and promotion highlights the ways in which moral and intellectual excellence, when coupled with devotion to higher principles, can secure both respect and effectiveness in leadership, regardless of the changing tides of political power. Daniel's story also illustrates the dynamic interplay between human achievement and divine guidance, revealing that extraordinary wisdom and capability are magnified when aligned with principles that honor truth, justice, and faith. His ability to thrive under successive rulers, each with distinct temperaments, priorities, and challenges, speaks not only to his practical skills but to an inner resilience rooted in a life of consistent ethical practice and spiritual devotion. By maintaining his integrity, demonstrating prudence, and applying his discernment for the good of the kingdom, Daniel achieved a level of influence that few could rival, shaping policies, mediating conflicts, and guiding the empire through periods of both stability and uncertainty. Even as he rose to the highest echelons of power, Daniel's conduct remained exemplary, reinforcing the notion that true leadership is inseparable from moral responsibility. He never used his authority for personal gain or to manipulate outcomes for self-interest. Instead, he leveraged his position to foster justice, promote fairness, and uphold the principles he had followed since his youth in Jerusalem. His example resonates across time, offering a model of leadership in which intelligence, moral clarity, and unwavering faith converge to create enduring impact, demonstrating that the measure of greatness lies not in titles or dominion, but in the consistent application of wisdom, integrity, and courage in service to both God and humanity. In essence, Daniel's rise to high office under multiple kings illustrates a profound narrative of resilience, faith, and excellence, showing that character and competence, when aligned with principles higher than oneself, can transcend the vicissitudes of fortune, the ambitions of rivals, and the uncertainties of political life. His story affirms that enduring influence is achieved not through manipulation or fear, but through the harmonization of skill, virtue, and steadfast devotion, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire those who seek to navigate the challenges of leadership, power, and faith with wisdom, courage, and unshakable integrity. As Daniel's life unfolded within the shifting sands of empires, from the grandeur of Babylon to the vast dominion of the Medes and Persians, his journey was marked not only by extraordinary survival and political acumen, but by the profound prophetic revelations that would leave a lasting imprint on generations to come. Among these divine visions, the most celebrated is the prophecy of the 70 weeks, a complex and intricate timeline that would eventually point toward the coming of the Messiah and pivotal events in the history of Israel. These visions, conveyed with clarity and symbolic richness, offered guidance, hope, and foresight to a people scattered and exiled, demonstrating that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, the plans of God remain steadfast and purposeful. Daniel's role as a conduit for these revelations elevated him from a mere advisor in the courts of kings to a spiritual and prophetic figure whose insights transcended the boundaries of his own time, shaping religious thought and inspiring countless believers to trust in divine providence and act with courage and discernment. Throughout his prophetic ministry, Daniel exemplified the virtues of courage, integrity, and unwavering faithfulness. He navigated the treacherous waters of political intrigue with remarkable poise, balancing the demands of human authority with the higher imperatives of divine obedience. Even when threatened with death, as in the case of the lion's den, Daniel remained steadfast, his life a testament to the principle that true devotion is not contingent upon convenience or safety, but is rooted in trust and fidelity to God. His consistent practice of prayer, his moral clarity, and his fearless adherence to what he knew to be right, regardless of the personal cost, rendered him a figure of unparalleled inspiration, proving that integrity and courage are not merely abstract virtues but tangible forces that can influence rulers, nations, and the course of history itself. The prophetic visions Daniel received extended beyond immediate political or social concerns, offering insights into the divine orchestration of history and the unfolding of God's plan. These revelations were both practical and esoteric, providing hope to the exiled Jewish people, while also challenging leaders and citizens of the empire to recognize forces greater than their own authority. By recording these visions with care and precision, Daniel ensured that future generations would have access to wisdom that combined foresight, spiritual discernment, and moral guidance. His writings encourage believers to act with discernment, to remain faithful even when the prevailing powers seemed oppressive or unjust, and to understand that perseverance in faith and virtue carries consequences far beyond the visible realm of immediate events. Daniel's life, framed by these visions, demonstrates the enduring power of resilience and dedication. His story shows that one individual, grounded in faith and guided by divine wisdom, can have a transformative impact on the world around them. From his youth in Jerusalem to his advanced years serving under multiple kings, Daniel remained consistent in his principles, proving that influence and greatness are not merely a function of position or power, but emerge from steadfast commitment to ethical and spiritual truths. The prophetic visions, in particular, reinforced the understanding that God's sovereignty governs the rise and fall of kingdoms, and that faithful obedience can place individuals in positions where they serve as instruments of divine purpose. Moreover, Daniel's example serves as a moral and spiritual guide, showing that courage and discernment are inseparable from a life of faith. His unwavering devotion in times of trial, combined with his intellectual and administrative excellence, illustrates how wisdom and righteousness can coexist, allowing one to navigate both worldly and spiritual challenges effectively. By embracing his role as a prophet and maintaining his integrity amidst political and social pressures, Daniel demonstrated that true leadership and influence are measured not by wealth or status, but by the consistency of character, the courage to act rightly, and the clarity to understand and respond to divine guidance. As we reflect on Daniel's extraordinary life from his captivity in Babylon to his service in royal courts, from his interpretation of dreams to his prophetic visions, we see a figure whose legacy transcends history and culture. His story encourages us to face adversity with steadfast faith, to act with integrity even when circumstances are daunting, and to seek wisdom and discernment in every decision. Daniel's life is a vivid reminder that courage, devotion, and moral clarity are forces that can shape the world, inspire generations, and offer hope even in the most challenging circumstances. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the remarkable life of Daniel, the prophet who endured trials, interpreted divine mysteries, and received visions that continue to inspire. If you enjoyed this story and want to explore more historical and spiritual narratives, do not forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support allows us to continue sharing stories that enlighten, inspire, and challenge us to live with courage, faith, and wisdom. Now, as the day comes to a close, I wish you a peaceful and restful night. May the story of Daniel inspire your dreams and remind you that steadfast faith and integrity can guide us through any challenge. Good night, and sleep well.